welcome. We are going live today, and we are answering your questions about architecture and building on Hawaii Island with my friend John Hetherington, who is an architect. And I'm going to let him tell you guys a little bit about his credentials and his background. And we are asking people. We have some questions that have already been, put out there in the comment section, and John will be answering those questions. But as John's, just kind of giving you some background of what he does, if you have further questions, go ahead and put them in there, and Eric Zemelis will be the one who are reading those out. And if you don't know me, Julie Zemelis and Eric, we run 365 Hawaii, and we also work with How to Move to Hawaii 365, and this is one of the things that we offer to help people who are considering moving and buying here in Hawaii. And John is going to help with the present question of what's it take to build in Hawaii. So give us a little bit of background about what you are and who you are, and go for it.
Okay, so moved to Hawaii in 1990 to help some friends build a house. Took a job as a carpenter to stay here. Eventually got my contractor's license. Then I decided I wasn't having fun doing that, so I went and got my architect's license. I've been licensed as an architect for 12 years. I do a lot of planning issues and zoning issues. I work both residential and commercial improvements. So I've done a few restaurants, a cold kitchen for Paradise Salsa down south, and I just had some folks call yesterday about doing a cold kitchen for a cocoa farm. So a wide variety of things, both boots on the ground experience as well as the design work that's involved in building, and the permitting process, which is a large factor in Hawaii.
Did you build your own home?
So we just built 4 years ago, and this is the first home I ever owned. And we did it, so in Hawaii there is this choice you can make between hiring a general contractor or having a what's called an owner-builder permit. So we did ours owner-builder because I had the background and experience. The only work we did was cleaning up on the weekends. We hired everything out, but we still saved about $70,000 on the project that we would have paid a general contractor to do his portion, to run the project and make his profit. So did I build it? No, I did design it. There's the owner builder is very attractive to a lot of people, but there's also challenges in doing it, and that's a bigger question.
Yes, because knowing the local labor force and who you can trust to help you build a home is as valuable as basically anything else too. Because if you come onto the island to start thinking, okay, I'm just going to be my own general, and then open up the yellow pages and start pulling people, that's not the best way to handle that, right?
Oh no. The making personal connections with people that you trust. Listening to the advice of professionals that you trust, whether that's a contractor or an architect or an engineer. I had a fellow just the other day say, I was looking on the website for all the concrete contractors, and I'm going to go with this guy. I'm not mentioning any names, but I said, if you do that, I will not work on your project. Right? This guy's been around for 40 years that I know of, but it's not somebody that I would recommend to my clients. And so having personal connections, folks like Eric and Julie who've been around and know people, makes a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. So are there other people?
Yep, we got people watching.
Okay. So let's start with the first question. So Eric has to actually put his glasses on real quick and come to the first question. And it was about building costs. So one of our longtime people, Lance Bond, gave 3 questions, and he was talking specifically about what's the price a square foot now with the lumber costs going up. So while Eric's looking for that one, do you want to talk about lumber costs and how that's helped to alleviate or help to make housing a little bit more expensive here?
Sure. So, and this is literally in the last year since COVID started. Hawaii Island has been on a kind of a slow and steady productive pace for the last 5 years. But since the COVID crisis happened, and actually this goes nationwide, lumber futures 6 months ago were already up 188%.
Wow.
Currently, they're up 300%
Wow.
from a year ago. So now, if you take a 2,000 square foot home, you got concrete, you've got roofing, you've got gutters, you've got flooring, you've got all those things. The lumber package is, depending on the size of the home, is it 1 story or 2 story, but roughly, if a home costs $200 a square foot to build, for instance, the lumber package and the framing package would be about $40 a square foot a year ago. And of that $40 a square foot, 15 of that was labor, 20 of that was material. So if we're up 300%, we're probably looking at probably $50 a square foot for the materials, but that's only a portion of the total cost.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely is having an impact. I have not checked recently on the HPM or Hansador package homes to see how their pricing has gone up. I have a project that's going out for a truss package very shortly, and I will be shocked and amazed when I see those numbers. But yeah, things have gone up, and labor has gone up as well.
Yeah.
So Lance Bond asks, how much is there less red tape with the modifications to the HPM package or a new home plan from scratch?
That depends, is the classic answer. Generally speaking, the HPM packages are a really affordable way to go. Because if you're buying all of your materials from them, or most of their materials, you're getting package pricing. And so the question of red tape, and the other thing about the HPM homes, at least as far as I know, they do everything except the foundation or the site plan, right? You still have to have somebody who can provide to do the foundation, because we're on a hillside, there's so many possibilities. We used to do post and pier, that's not allowed by code anymore. So I had a lady, lovely lady, Katie, you guys might remember her. We did a remodel on her home in Keoho, and I spent 100 hours with her just playing with the floor plan.
Oh, wow.
And she was 100,000% thrilled to have somebody who would take that time and not say, no, you have to do it this way, no, you have to do it that way. So that's what I call the playtime. So in terms of red tape, it wouldn't make any difference on the county level whether it's a package home or a custom home. But in terms of the time that it takes to generate the structural drawings, I do my own structural for the wind and the seismic forces we have to allow for in Hawaii. And so on a custom home, that's going to tend to cost more just because they tend to be more complicated. So the short answer is it's probably going to be less red tape, if you will, using that term on the package homes. But I've heard stories of people doubling their cost just for the fun of it. And you know, again, it takes a certain amount to build a shell. One of the stories I tell all the time is when you buy your kitchen faucet, you can spend $300 on a really nice Moen faucet, or you can spend $1,200 on a Hansgrohe faucet. The Hansgrohe will be slightly more elegant, it will last longer, but what's your budget going into the project? I literally had a lady in Kohala Ranch up north. She spent $300 a piece on her cabinet poles.
Oh, jeez.
They were handmade by an artist in Massachusetts. Or you can go to Home Depot and get $1.99. You can get them each. So
that's what we did.
So you can take the same 1,200 or even 1,200 or 2,000, whatever the square footage is, and you can blow it totally on finishes and accoutrements, or you can do it more affordably. So the cost per square foot for a home varies widely depending on the levels of finishes, the site work that might be involved, and the choices that people make.
Yeah, yeah. Question.
With all the building that is going on here on the island, how much are the architects pushed out? What's your opinion in terms of how long do you think it would get to work with an architect these days?
It's not pretty. I've been getting 2 to 3 calls a day for the last 3 months.
Wow.
And I used to spend an hour just talking to folks, trying to find out more about their project. Will it work? I couldn't make any money just talking to people, right? So I've been pushing people out, and right now I'm telling people, if I took on your project today or agreed to it, I wouldn't be able to start the work on it for about 4 to 5 months. The architects all of the architects and the engineers that I'm in communication with, I'm on the AIA board of Honolulu, so I have a lot of interprofessional communication, and basically everybody's telling me the same thing. It's about 4 to 5 months out before they can start new projects.
Wow.
And at the same time, with COVID and the way things happened, I had a doctor from Seattle, worked with him for 2 years, getting everything ready to go, and then COVID hit and he pulled the whole project. So that opened up the door for me to do other things, right? And do other projects. And it depends entirely on everybody's circumstance. I'm a sole practitioner. I don't have staff. When mechanical or plumbing engineering are involved, I hire that out. Civil engineering is a separate thing for your retaining walls or your septic systems. But basically I do everything in-house. And Hawaii Island, unlike Honolulu, which has large firms with 20, 30 people in it, Hawaii Island, the architects are mostly either sole practitioners, or they maybe have 2 or 3 people helping them. So it doesn't hurt to call around, because you never know who's going to have an open door if somebody cancels a project.
Let me ask you a question. How many architects do you think we have on this island?
Well, the AIA, the state says we have 135. That's not really true. There are lots of people who are on the mainland who are licensed in Hawaii. The AIA list and email communications that I'm a part of have about 30 people who actually live on the Big Island, some of whom do most of their work internationally. They're not necessarily working here. There are also at least 10 or 12 architects that I know of who are not part of the AIA, American Institute of Architects, but who are here and working. So we have a good, for a small, we only have 170,000 people on this island, but there's a lot of development happening, especially right now.
Yeah, okay. So Eric, what else?
So the next question is, what type of zoning should we be looking for when purchasing land if we want to be able to have a couple of rooms for an Airbnb?
Right, so there's only really 2 options left, and that's certain places in residential zoning and the resort zoning. We used to be able to do that in the agricultural areas, but the new laws which were passed have eliminated that. So it's very, very limited. Multifamily and you can, so there is another option though, right? So if you live on the property, you can have a rental unit, like an Airbnb type unit, but you cannot be an absentee owner and rent your property out short-term vacation rentals. So there are options that are possible. The County of Hawaii, and this would be a planning department question. In the Hawaii County Code, you're not going to remember all this necessarily. It's Chapter 25 is the planning department portion of the Hawaii County Codes, and there is a subchapter in that specifically about vacation rentals and what's possible and not. And I will send Eric and Julie a link to that, so that they can.
Put it below.
Yeah, and we're going to put this on YouTube too, so we can put it down in the comment section too, the description. Okay, good.
Okay, next question is, we would love a good understanding of the possibility of building a home using bamboo.
Aha. I've come across this a couple of times. The challenge is structurally. There are certain manufacturers of bamboo kit homes which do have approval to do projects in Hawaii.
Yeah.
There is a place down by Lani House Center right now that a friend of mine, contractor Robert Lieb, did the work on. It has bamboo facing, but not structurally bamboo. And while I did a lot of research on this, because a friend of mine in Hilo was growing bamboo and wanted to start preserving it and setting it up for houses here. But there are a lot of challenges with getting the approvals needed from the government structurally, because it's not listed in all of the standard code books, right? So if you can get a package home that has pre-approvals from the county, you can do it.
Oh, okay. Do you mean that, I think it's a condo complex, that one that it looks like it's made out of bamboo?
Yes.
The one next to, near
Right, Lani
Kopiko.
Kopiko Plaza, right
Plaza.
next to
Yeah,
Kopiko
yeah.
Plaza.
That's beautiful, too.
It's a gorgeous place.
Yeah. Okay, anybody else?
Yes, we got one more question. What's the best course if we know we're building on our own?
Okay.
Be careful.
Okay. So that would be owner builder, as we would call it, and so there is also on the county and state websites there are specific language about what you can and can't do. Basically, you can do everything from the concrete to the roof to all the finishes, but you cannot do electrical and plumbing yourself. You have to have licensed plumbers and electricians. And so what I looked at, if it were 15 years ago when I built my house, I have carpentry skills, but I'm not a roofer, I don't do gutters, I'm not so great at flooring. So you would ask, the first question I would say is, what is my skill set? And then, do I need to hire people to fill in the blanks, basically, to get a project done? Again, when I did my house, we hired everything out, right? I had a tile guy, I had a flooring guy, I had a concrete guy, all subcontractors. And so the one thing I would highly caution you about is trying to do owner builder if you're not living here on the island. It's even though you want to save that money. So the story goes, they were building our house 4 years ago. The concrete guys were outside staining our little walkway. The painter was inside spraying paint on the walls, and he forgot to put a tarp up at the laundry room door. I'm fortunately only 4 minutes away, a minute and a half away where I used to live. The concrete guys call me, he says, "John, you got to get over here right now." And I'm going over there, and the paint's coming out the door onto the newly stained concrete. So, pardon my language here, but it was like, "Stop now. You go back inside, you turn that off, you take that over here, you guys fix this, this is how we're going to do it."
Yeah.
Right? And that's what a general contractor does. When there are problems, they manage the trades. And so as owner builder, it's wonderful if you can do it all by yourself and you have all those skills and or are willing to learn. But if you're hoping to just save that management cost, be prepared to be the manager. That's what I would say.
Right. Yeah, and you're right. The fact that that these people are dealing with this and that they have to connect, and also knowing what you know about our local tradespeople, are they pretty much booked out too? And so trying to get the electrician guy to give you what you need, so the guy over here can do his job next. It's a deal, right?
Timing and sequencing is huge on even a small residential project, and we have 1,600 square foot home with a 528 square foot detached garage. We did our build out in 7 months from start to finish, moving earth and trenching on the ground to moving in. And we had a timeline, so we had to meet it. We were extremely fortunate that the day the electricians finished, the inspector came and the drywall guy could come 2 days later, right? I've also seen projects where, okay, I got all my inspections, I can close the wall, but the drywall guy can't show up for a month because he's so busy now, right? So you have to be prepared for a time frame. You know, typically, even for smaller homes, you would say from the time I start moving earth, it'll be a year before I can move in.
A year.
And if it's, 10,000 square feet mansion, that's another story altogether.
Yeah. So, any more
So
questions?
Did that answer the question?
Those are all the questions that I have that were on that people asked.
Okay, and that's probably that kind of goes through the whole thing. So, so we've got about like 5 or 6 more minutes to.
Sure.
Do you want to just tell another interesting story of a nightmare that maybe people might want to know about, so that they might avoid that problem for themselves?
Sure. Let me think of a good one. There's so many. Okay, and this is really important for Hawaii. Just down the street from here, a couple of miles down over around the island, was a subdivision. I was hired to do cabinet work, and when I was still a carpenter, and the strangest things were happening on this job. I personally didn't have problems, but every other contractor, the electricians had wires buried in the concrete. The plumber couldn't find where he'd run his lines. Literally, the excavator's trailer came off, went down the driveway, across the street, and landed on the neighbor's garage. And there were these constant mishaps, right? Again, I was not personally affected. I looked up the history of that land, and there had been a massive massacre and battle precisely in that location. So one thing I hope all of you appreciate, not that there's necessarily problems in Hawaii, but it is a special place, and it has a history, and respecting that history is a huge part of being able to make this your home.
Okay, so question for you on that one. Okay. If you hired an architect, would you direct an architect to try and do a little bit of a history fact checking on the land before you start building? Is that something that architects do? I mean, how do you even go about trying to even like make sure that even, or you bring your favorite Hawaiian kahuna come in and do the how's the energy on the land feeling?
Well, both.
Okay.
Right. There is so a lot of this depends on where you're building. If you're in a subdivision that's already been through the archaeological studies, that's already been through the surveys and recording of the history for that land, then you're probably just going to get county permits and build your house, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're on bare land, I have a friend just up the hill. It cost him $48,000 to do the archaeological study on 2.5 acres of land because it hadn't been touched since the 1930s.
Oh, wow.
So as part of that, aside from the archaeologists doing the history, I started researching all the history of the family, and in the end, they found no items that were considered Native Hawaiian, but you have to get that study in order to be able to develop even as a private individual a piece of land you own if it has never been done before. So that's another huge. I mean, Hawaii, we're a small town, but we got a lot of rules.
Yeah.
If you're close to the ocean, it's a corrosive environment. There's potential tsunamis. I know, and I love being here. I wouldn't go anywhere. We have tsunamis, earthquakes, potential hurricanes, and volcanoes going off and on, right? And so you have to know. And for me, the moment I stepped onto this land, I had never come here sight unseen. I knew it was my home, right? Lots of folks will move here and hoping to make it their home or their retirement place, but 3 years down the road, all the rest of the family's on the mainland, right? And it becomes expensive to travel or hard to travel, or maybe you have to take care of your parents. So making this permanent home is one thing, and if I know lots of people who live here for 20 years and then they move back to the mainland, there's multicultural, I'm going to say, both in terms of history, in terms of how people feel about the place. There are high-end subdivisions where they don't even touch the local folks, right? They got their $20 million homes and they do their thing and run their big yachts out there, and God bless them, that's their right. But they don't interact, with the locals, and that's really important for me. That's why I love it here, because it is multicultural and people do work on getting along.
Right, right. And that's part of, a lot of people, in fact, that's what I like about our group, is that we encourage people who are coming here because of the people and the spirit of the land and the aloha. And it's not about grabbing a piece of land that's rural because they're trying to run away from the mainland. A lot of people in our group actually feel called to the island, and they do feel a special connection. And also we tell them about the transient nature of the island too, so that when you come, if you do feel that I'm home feeling, you have a better shot at making it here in the long run than if you come just because you're looking for pretty blue water, right?
Right.
And so and also there's challenges here that you have to get through. So your resiliency has to be kind of like on high guard, and also knowing and believing in the fact that there is something that goes on around here at night. And so
You bet. And you can't be in a hurry.
Yeah.
I had a client recently called it HRT, Hawaii Response Time. So there is no such thing as overnight delivery. That's 3 to 4 days.
Yeah.
2 to 3 day delivery is 5 to 6 to 7 days. I'll be there in a week means I'll be there sometime in the next couple or 3 weeks. I'll be there this month means, I might show up.
I might show up.
And so if you cannot relax into it, you will have a hard time here.
Yeah.
But if you can, again, I don't want to move. I don't want to go anywhere. This is my home.
Yeah. We did a video on patience, learning patience in Hawaii. Because if you're high strung and you come from the mainland and dang it, you're going to get things done and you're going to ride people and you're going to make them show up. There's a good shot that you might not belong here.
It's true. And
your workers might not show up either.
And you will find resistance.
Yes, resistance.
When I first went into the building department 27 years ago, I was sitting there. I waited 2.5 hours for the person I wanted to see to show up. And everybody's going, "Are you sure you don't want to leave and come back?" I says, "No, I'll wait." I waited. While I was there, a guy came in, started screaming at the county clerks. I could literally see the concrete sinking beneath the clerk's feet. There was no way he was going to budge that. And what I've learned is, I come in and say, "Hey, I've got this. I'm dealing with this. I've got a problem. How do you recommend that I approach this?" Instead of telling them how it should be done. And my relationships with the planning department, the building department are really good because I respect who they are, and I know the abuse that they have to put up with from the public. And that's potentially anybody, any race, any creed, any time, right? It's a tough job, and so coming in with respect will help you all across the islands.
Right, right. So you guys, I'm not making this stuff up. I tell you guys these things. And then we bring in John, who is not part of our whole experience. And yet, yes, he tells you. And he sees the planning department people all the time. We use the planning department as the number one. If you're going to piss people off, you've never seen people move slower and try and make life harder for you than if you go into the planning department with an axe to grind because things aren't going your way.
I have a rule. If I take your project on, I don't allow you to talk to the county. Because two things. One is people tend to ask too many questions. and they're only theoretical questions. And the county can only make justifiable and honest calls on a question if something is literally presented to them to look at. Before that, it's theoretical, and they will give you answers, but they're not always going to be the final answer. And so I take on that, for at least with my clients, I take on that role and be their representative for their wants and needs.
There you go. That way, the right questions are being asked for the right answers in a time frame that they want to give them to you. Because if you start just going off on their time, they're just going to get upset and kind of twisted with that too, right?
Absolutely. And one last story. Okay, New York. I was in we went on the bus with friends to go to an Afro-Cuban drumming festival at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. None of us had ever been to New York. We got off the bus. We needed to take a subway. And so we started this process of asking people, do we take train A, train B, train C? We would ask 2 people and get different answers. And this happens with the county. And so the rule that we came was when we got 2 out of 3 answers the same, we would take that train. And we did get to our destination. And so there is a solidity that happens when you present an actual project. And everybody would like to get the approvals faster than is possible. But again, you have to be able to relax and work with that, at least on this island.
There you go. I'll put that in the comments too, that listen to the end of the thing about how you dealing with accounting, dealing with projects, is the fact that patience is needed, and that, you know what, you just gotta breathe, right? Gotta breathe.
Yeah.
So, okay, any questions?
Last comment, Paul K says, hi, Julie and Eric. Sending
Paul.
aloha to you from Paul and Tom.
Oh, there you go. Paul just bought a place at the Pines.
Wonderful.
So congratulations. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up. And as you heard, John is scheduled out, 5 or 6 months in advance. But a few of you we know that are out a couple years, we'll leave John's contact information into the comment section. And, obviously he's quite sought after. And also because he has been here for so long, he's one of the kinds of guys that you want on your team. So we'll do that for you. And thank you so much for joining us and giving us some great information today.
Thank you both for having me. And I wish everybody well, and hope when you move here, this becomes your home too.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, aloha.